Hey, Staffing Monthly, it's Dan Mori here, and I am excited about our guest. We actually have somebody that is incredibly well known in the industry, and he is really the managing member of one of the premier legal firms for the staffing industry. And as you know, such a highly regulated industry that seems to be ever evolving with the regulations that we have to jump through. It's important to have good partners in your corner that understand this side of it. And I'm actually really pleased to welcome Mori Borosko from Becker LLC, he's been the managing member there since 2006, and he's actually personally oversees the staffing team, and he works with investment bankers and accountants and takes a really holistic approach to create these great legal best practice strategies to advise staffing agencies on, so they make sure that they're protected, yet they're doing things in a way that's going to add value to the agency and actually promote growth within the agency. And if you are anything like me, that's the kind of legal partner that you want to be with. And that's why I'm grateful to bring, again, Mori Borosko from Becker LLC onto Staffing Monthly to share his perspective about the state of staffing in 2022 here. So, Marty, thank you so much for joining us and just sharing your wisdom with the Staffing Monthly audience here.
Well, thanks, Dan. Really excited to be able to chat with you a little bit about the industry. You know, we know each other, and like you, this industry is my passion. So to get a few moments to talk shop, it's always exciting.
I love it, man. I love it. I agree with that. And so just for the audience, and I can't believe there's anybody out there that actually might not know who you are. I mean, I feel like you're everywhere, being the face of Becker and really the key legal agency in the industry. But why don't you give a little bit of a snippet of what is your role? Like, how are you immersed in the staffing agency or the staffing industry right now?
Sure, love to. Well, most people say, long story short. I'm a little bit of a storyteller, so it ends up being short story long with me. So I think I'll set the background by kind of talking about how I got into the industry. And I really kind of slipped into it and fell into it. 15 years ago, I was leaving what they would call in the legal field big law, so a big law firm. And I got recruited over to Becker, and it was intriguing because Becker's kind of more of a boutique firm, and really does dive into certain industries, versus trying to be kind of a general practice attorney. The motto at the firm is to really get into specific industries. So when I got there, wasn't sure where I would gravitate. And first couple projects I worked on, one was with a healthcare firm and one was with a staffing firm. And I just loved working with the staffing firm. I'm kind of a people person. It's a people industry. And I said, you know, I really enjoy this. That's where I want to gravitate. So speeding it up, rolling it forward 15 years, you know, we've built just a fantastic team at Becker. We've represented, I'm terrible with numbers, that's why I'm a lawyer. I think we represented our 144th brand name in the industry this year.
Wow.
And I'm, you know, nobody keeps these statistics, but I'm pretty sure that's by far and away in terms of a law firm, the most brand names that a law firm has represented. So it's exciting, and we kind of built kind of a team, and you've laid it out there that kind of reflects the industry. So one part of the team is more of an operational compliance part of the team. One of my partners, Chris Letty, who's a former in-house counsel.
He's great.
You work with him all the time at a staffing firm. He kind of runs that team, and he's got 4 members of that team, and they try and, you know, they're working on the onboarding, the offboarding, the other employment compliance issues, contractual issues. You know, that's their area that they work in every day with our clients. And then I'm over on the other side of the equation with my partner, Kent Schwartz, who CPA and tax attorney by background, and we're handling more of the strategic issues that staffing firms face, you know, proper corporate structure, finance, mergers and acquisitions, key employees and compensation plans, things of that nature. So, you know, that's kind of the perspective that I have. Our group kind of has the operational and the strategic side of it. And I bring that perspective to our clients every day.
Well, I've seen it firsthand, and just to give a testimony on it, the one thing that, and I've worked with a handful of different legal firms with issues related specifically to the staffing industry. And the one thing that I've come to appreciate the most about Becker and your team there is the practical approach, right? Like, I feel like when we're working through problems, I don't feel like we're nuanced down into the law and precedent and all that stuff. Like, I know you guys are doing all that, legal wizardry behind the scenes and compliance, but like when we're working through problems, I feel like there's an incredible balance of the practical business decision side overlaid with, the legal implications and the legal obligations that we would have to make. So I've come to appreciate that approach that Becker has.
I think it's critical in this industry because, of the nature of the industry, of the nature of the morass of employment compliance regulations that may or may not impact what you're doing, the margins that the industry has. We try and take a practical approach, and what we say as our team is we don't always want to say no, right? There's so many lawyers who, I think their default is to say no, right? You can't do that. Or, instead of really trying to figure out how can you do that, right? How much risk is really there? And that's not to say that we're going to put you out on a limb, right? Because we're not going to put you out on a limb.
Right.
But we like to find more efficient ways to do things, find what we call acceptable risk at times. And that's really more of our motto.
And I think that makes sense, especially when you work with the executives or the owners of the agencies that are more entrepreneurial in spirit, and they're more, risk tolerant. They typically don't like the quick no. They don't like that mindset. They want to say, hey, how do we do this? Like, how do we do this and manage the risk? What is the risk that I need to be thinking about? So I think that approach probably marries really well with the audience that you work with.
Definitely. I mean, it's part of what drew me to the staffing industry is that the folks are very entrepreneurial, and entrepreneurial in a different way than say, the automotive industry or certain technology industries. This is a different spirit to it. So I think it marries well with what I think is the entrepreneurial spirit of this industry.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And when I think about this industry and the type of change that has occurred over the last 2 years, with the pandemic and COVID and how it's really impacted the staffing industry as a whole, that's where I want to start our conversation today. Is like, how do you see it? Like, what are the biggest changes? And I know agencies are at the forefront and they know this, but like, what are the biggest changes that you see that are the most impactful to this industry that are here to stay, that we're just going to have to deal with or learn how to manage going forward?
Well, you're going to have this a menu of different workplaces and what workplaces look like, right? Before, workplaces looked very similar, and the future is a menu, and we probably don't even have the full menu in front of us, right? There's going to be continue morphing of what the modern day workplace looks like. And when you overlay that with all of the compliance issues that exist in the United States today, with a weak federal government that we've had for the last 20 years and employment compliance shifting to states and even municipalities and cities, that's a complex circumstance and environment, and it's just going to stay that way. So I think that's, an obvious one. I'll tell you one that I think the staffing industry is not looking closely enough at right now, and that's data security and data privacy. We now have 5 states that have data privacy laws. California, not surprising, passing the first data privacy law. And most staffing firms aren't looking at it right now because all of the laws have an exemption for employment-related data, right? So staffing firms right now aren't required to comply with what is, a very burdensome set of rules with respect to how you handle individuals' data. California has an exemption that expires unless they extend it the 1st of next year.
Oof.
Now, there is a lot of feeling that will be extended one more year, but it hasn't been, at least as of last week. I'll be honest, I haven't looked at it in the past week. So, if California doesn't extend that exemption, then all of the information that staffing firms who are, operating in California are collecting from their internal and contingent workforce are going to be subject to these data privacy rules. And I don't want to scare people to death, but one of the rules, Dan, is if somebody makes a request that you delete their data, you have to delete their data from every system you have. Well, if you think about the staffing industry, right, how many different places are your recruiters touching? Obviously, the ATS is easy, right? We're going to be able to delete from there. But you're
Right.
sending emails, you're sending texts to your people, you've got text systems, and they're not all integrated. So if this law were to become, if this exemption were not to pass, and one of your contingent workers were to say, hey, employment solution, sir, please delete all my data. Okay, how are you going to do that?
So there's got to be, additional carve outs that I'm not thinking of that you alluded to for the employment piece, but how does that intersect with like legal employment forms that we're actually bound to maintain the records of for a certain number of years, like the I-9? Like how does the request to delete data overlap with that?
Exceptions for that. So that type of data can remain.
Okay.
But your email you sent, your text message you sent, your ATS data, a lot of that data would have to go. And so you'll have to figure out how you're going to find it all and obviously delete it if that passes. Now, hopefully we don't have to deal with that for a few more years, but
Jeez, I hope
I'll be
not.
surprised if it doesn't finally happen. That what's going to happen is there's going to be some incident where employee data, something happens to it, and it'll trigger folks to probably get rid of the exemption. So that's one that I see, data privacy, and I see it, as you know, I do a lot of mergers and acquisitions. I see the buyers, especially the sophisticated buyers, spending much more time in diligence and being much more focused in the reps and warranties that they make the sellers make regarding their data privacy practices. So I'm seeing it there as well. So to me, data privacy is maybe something we avoid, but it's lurking out there as a big impact on this industry.
That's fascinating to me, because I know like sometimes agencies are so ingrained with their clients that they will send applicant or candidate data over that ends up in the applicant tracking system of the client, and the root is with the agency. So I would be, wow, that's going to be a can of worms if that gets not extended.
There's a good article, I'm blanking on the gentleman's name, but an industry technophile, a staffing industry technophile. I can't remember his name. He works for one of the big companies that he wrote about the complications that the industry would face if they have to comply with these data privacy rules. So, people, if you Google it, you'll see it, and it's a good article. It's not that long. I think it's 5-6 pages.
We'll have to, if you can think of it or have someone on your team send it to me, we can include that in the episode here to let people see that, because I think that's something that we should be looking at. I know the CFO, CTO types have been thinking about the data security for a little while, but I really, yeah. And there's another one. What about the biometrics? I felt like I saw a case or something out there in Chicago. I think there was one that involved Apple, but there was a movement where time clocks were actually capturing kind of biometrics for like clocking in and clocking out. How about that as it intersects with face recognition? Is there something there that agencies need to be thinking about or be aware of?
Yeah, that could fall in, I think, a couple different categories. Certainly could fall in the data privacy categories, and you could have if employment data isn't, it somehow some point doesn't stay exempt, you can have problems there. What you're using it for, right? You know, why are you using it? What are you using it for? You get into all the discrimination, age, all of those issues with respect to collecting that. Obviously plays into wage and hours, you know, disputes and how does it work, you know, in that. So that's right. As you know, technology helps us with the efficiency, but it creates issues from a compliance standpoint as well.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so on that note, as you've seen companies shift and react and respond and maybe evolve themselves to how they've been impacted by the pandemic, outside of that piece right there, what do you think is the one area that agencies have left themselves most exposed to that they ought to be thinking about as we move back to normal?
So again, the completely shifted and changed work environment just has added complexity in areas we know. I mean, most people are familiar with you know, all of the rules and regulations with respect to when you can force people to take tests, when you can't, and that. But then there's simple things that it impacts as well, and folks don't realize. It's impacted where you pay your income taxes, where you have to register to do business. So, you know, we all used to report to the same office for the most part, right? So it was pretty obvious where we did things, but it's not as obvious anymore. The tests with respect to where you should be authorized to do business, where you need to pay income taxes have gotten a little blurry in this new. And again, this is, you know, for Chris, my partner Chris, he sees it all on the operational front. I see these issues again on the M&A front. So you'll see buyers that we work with, buyers that when we're on the sales side, spending a lot more time really scrutinizing where staffing firms that they're looking to acquire have filed taxes, where they've got authority to do business, and there's been a number of deals that have where the seller, because they haven't kept up and kept pace with that, and the fact thought about that could change, you know, have had to pay some consequences in the deal. The deals have gone through, but they've had to pay some consequences in the form of indemnification and escrows and things of that nature, because the buyer just doesn't believe they filed their taxes in all the right places.
Yeah, and that right there is testament to why you need a good partner in your corner to making sure that you're compliant in those areas. So I like that. What about, so obviously there's good things that come out of even seemingly bad situations. So what is something good that you think that you've seen come out of the pandemic for this industry?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if there's anything good from a legal compliance perspective, because I don't think those two words can really go properly in a sentence together. So, but what I think I've seen that are obvious to benefit the industry is this has just probably created or accelerated the long-term shortage of labor, right? And the demand is there, and the fact that this has accelerated, and we've got the great resignation going on. We've got all of these factors, kind of a shook up labor market, to me always helps the staffing industry as long as there's demand, right? So I think that's positive. And I think that all of the programs that the government put into place to, you know, the government's goal when the pandemic hit was to keep people working, right?
Yeah.
And this is the industry that keeps people working. You know, the programs, I think, that interjected liquidity to keep people working have really helped the industry. And I think that it's put staffing firms in a good position to grow, to be acquisitive if they want to make acquisitions. So I think in those ways, I think the industry has benefited.
I would agree with that. I think that makes a ton of sense. And on the M&A side, are you seeing like a different level of activity, or maybe a different type of buyer than historically has been in the marketplace right now?
Great question, and very astute, because of both. both. I mean, we've traditionally done, we traditionally do between 8 and 10, maybe 12 deals in a busy year. We did 19 deals last year.
Wow.
So the activity is at an incredible pace, and this year we're on the same pace. Now I have a feeling it may fall off in the last quarter, but we're at the same pace this year. So activity is at an all-time high, and so been doing it for 15 years. So that's a pretty long period of time for this to be at an all-time high. So that for sure is activity. But where you were really astute is it looks different. And again, because I like to tell long stories, when I first got in 15 years ago, the buyers in the market were big strategics, right? That's who the buyers in the market. I'm not going to say they were the only buyers,
Right.
but they own the market. They were the everyday buyer, right? Then you got about 10 years ago, it's just started, but 5 years ago got serious push from private equity into the industry. So 5 years ago, you start to see private equity seriously invested in the industry, and you still see private equity coming into the industry at an increased rate. So, but now with the pandemic, I see two different types of buyers. I see what I would call the new generation of strategic buyers, I think it's it's interesting. I haven't thought about what I know. One reason these people in the market, they have liquidity and they're doing well, right? So that's one reason. The other reason, it's the new generation is it's folks like you, Dan. It's a younger generation that's out there making acquisitions. So they've got a great business. They're experiencing great growth. And they've just got a little bit different mindset. So we've got a younger group of buyers in the marketplace that I call the new generation of strategic buyers. Then you got a fourth group, which are technology buyers. They're not really, they don't view themselves as running staffing industry, staffing firms. They're running technology platforms.
Interesting.
And so you've got there's a group out of Australia. You got a couple groups that are trying to build just there's a couple of them out there. Fiverr is kind of that way. Upwork is that way. But you've got a few folks who are trying to do it in other industries, and so they're making acquisitions as well. So you've got that fourth group in the marketplace now as well.
So they've pre-built the digital marketplace, kind of the Uberize of it, and now they're trying to buy the people component, the clients and the people, to kind of just drop into their marketplace to accelerate it.
You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly the model. Exactly the model.
That's smart. And that's the crazy thing about that is, as we know about the tech sector, is they've got deeper pockets and they're willing to spend at higher valuations. So I feel like if that group takes hold, it might price the rest of the buyers out, unless there's really a strategic that can gain tremendous upside by, whether geographically speaking or client base or whatever, by doing the deal. That'll be interesting to see how that actually changes the value model of M&A in our industry.
Well, I think it's part of what's the, valuations, again, 15 years, valuations are at their highest point right now. And I think that is, I don't know that it's a large part of it, Dan. I wouldn't say that, but I do think it's a small part of it. I think that buyer out there is looking as though they're a tech play, and they're thinking they're going to get a tech multiple at the end of the day. And if you look at Upwork, I mean, they traded a tech multiple, right? If you compare Upwork, to one of the publicly traded staffing firms, it's a totally different
9 day,
market valuation that they're working off of. So that's their belief. Now the question is, over time, will they keep that? Will it be, when they go 5-10 years from now, will that be a technology play, or will it be a digital staffing firm, right? So, they could be overspending too, because maybe they're not going to get 10 times earnings, and they're going to end up with an EBITDA based multiple instead of a revenue based multiple. That's going to be the interesting thing.
That will be very interesting to watch how that plays out, because that's what I was thinking. Are they going to bring the staffing business up, or is the staffing multiple going to bring them down? you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good
It's
one.
a double-edged sword there.
Yeah. Well, I hope for the rest of us staffing people out there that we bring their industry down. Sounds horrible to say, but well, that's a perspective I didn't see coming. That's pretty good, man. I'm excited to see what happens in the M&A market. It's always fun to see how it shapes the industry, because like in any market you can see competitors kind of ebb and flow, and then they turn into new agencies and they're acquired, you know. But at the end of the day, like the acquiring company has to acclimate that acquired company into that new brand, new culture, new way of doing things, new ethos, and that's not always easy. And sometimes it actually presents an opportunity for the legacy competitors in the marketplace, you know, sort of the blood in the water with the shark mentality. So I don't know. It's an interesting world out there. I love that side of the business.
I think that's a really good point. You know, if you don't integrate right, it's almost everything. I mean, obviously you want to buy at the right price, but if you don't integrate right, then you've left the assets on the field for other people to pick up.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And that's one thing, that because you're buying client contracts and selected assets, like there's nothing truly protected, because there's no client in the world that's going to say, hey, I'm bound by your agreement, I have to keep doing business with you. And there's no, you know, employee contract, contingent, temporary, otherwise, that's going to say, oh, you know, I have to stay with you because this is my assignment. Like all those assets got free will and can walk right out the door after you buy. So you better be really buttoned up with a good agreement and with good relationships that you're retaining internally.
Yes, relationships for sure. For sure.
That's good, man. That's good. So what about just putting your managing member, kind of leading the staffing team's hat on? If you were going to talk to one owner or staffing executive that's watching this video right now and give them some guidance to say, hey, this is really what I would urge you to consider, be aware of, best practice to do to really better strengthen and position your agency over the next 12 months, what would you say to that person?
You know, it's interesting. My answer would have been different until something you just said. You know, I think it's a theme that's been in the industry. It's a theme that we're talking about. I think we're in an incredible labor shortage, right? And to me, a lot of staffing firms, and this is probably overgeneralizing, but this is what you'd have to do to make a point. The focus is more on the client than the contingent workforce, right?
Yeah.
To me, and what made me shift this answer is because I heard somebody from the University of Pennsylvania speak, who's kind of a labor market expert at the University of Pennsylvania, and what he's predicting is that, you know, in 5, 10, 15 years, you're going to see what he calls the return of the labor guild, right? Remember from like, what was it, 16th century, 17th century, before that even you had labor guilds. He's predicting that's going to happen again because of the way that everyone has shifted and drifted, and the power that the workforce could have, because there's such high demand, if they kind of work together. So there's an economic power to it. But he also talked about today is the perfect time for a social aspect of it, right? When you have so much online communities, so much technology, so that you know, you can bring these folks together to have economic power and to have kind of just a social connection that they have. You know, all the blacksmiths used to be part of the blacksmith guild. So, you know, I think that, to me, and then you overlay that with the employment compliance issues that are just going to be forever the plague of our industry. I think the folks who can, like you said, build relationships with their contingent workforce by treating them as a community, treating them as a core of their business, by building good compliance systems, right? So that you're really, you know, I hate to say it, embrace the regulation, right? Be a leader at being compliant, at taking care of the contingent worker, advocate for them. I think folks who make that shift, are going to really do well if what this guy at the University of Pennsylvania predicts is correct. So
I think you're spot on, actually. I really do. And you are 100% accurate when you say that most agencies overemphasize the client side. And, we get caught up focusing on the client because the client gives us the money, right? And we focus on that, and we're so afraid of losing the money that we over prioritize it. Yet we forget one key principle in all economics and all marketplace is that the customers will go where the inventory is, right? Like, I don't shop at Amazon because I love Amazon. I shop on Amazon because they have everything I need, right? And I can get it really quickly, right? And it's like, I don't go to Target because of Target. I go there because of the stuff that they have, right? It's like, those are your things. So if you really focus on having the best workforce and having amazing relationships with your contingent workforce where you can deploy good quality people into good assignments, the customers will come to you. And if you build up the best inventory set, you can charge a premium for it. But if you always focus on the client and then you just do what you can to fill the orders, you're always going to be racing against the commoditization game. And so I think you're 100% right. What labor guild or not, like, that's amazing to me. That's a pretty amazing prediction. But either way, just basic market economics say if you've got the best inventory, the customers will come to you because the demand is there.
And that's basically what he was saying. He was speaking at a convention that Upwork was holding that I attended. And, he was basically saying those market principles exist, embrace them. Yeah,
they really do. And yet we forget it. It's always amazing to me. And I hate to generalize, and I'm not trying to bash on the industry, but sometimes we get so caught up in the weeds and the day-to-day operations that you actually forget about the human element of the agency, and you forget that our inventory is our people. They're human beings, and if we can leverage the collective strengths to the advantage of creating a community, I think that better positions any agency. So I think that's great guidance for the viewers of Staffing Monthly here. I appreciate that, Marty.
Well, appreciate it, Dan. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come on. It's been a pleasure to talk shop with you, and look forward to getting together in the near future.
Absolutely. Likewise, man. Last thing, if anyone wants to reach out to you or Becker, what is the best way to do that if they want to get connected with a premium legal partner in the industry?
Sure. Certainly can give out probably emails the easiest way. My email's mlborosko@becker.legal, and folks can certainly contact me there. Also, obviously, go on there on our website. We've got a general website. We have a website just dedicated to our staffing industry practice. So either one of those websites, they can get to a link to me, get to some phone numbers for me. So any of those methods would work.
Great. And I'll make sure that we get these links right on page here. And I will urge all of you that are watching this, that if you really want to have, a good legal partner in your corner that's going to guide you through all these nuanced regulations that this industry is always going to face, or if you want to venture into M&A and you want to go down that route, I mean, it's going to pay you dividends to have somebody in your corner that can guide you the right way. So I fully endorse Becker in that regard. They've been fantastic. So, Marty, thank you again for coming on, man. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom on this industry with our group here, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.
You too, Dan. Thanks for having me. Take care.